You have watched countless videos trying to understand yourself. You have searched for answers about your purpose, your relationships, your fears, and the strange emptiness that follows you even when everything seems fine. For a moment, each new idea feels like the answer. But a few hours later, the same confusion returns, and you begin searching again. Carl Jung believed this endless search is not always a path toward truth. Sometimes it is the most intelligent way we have found to avoid facing it. The uncomfortable truth is that you may not need another answer. You may already know what is wrong. You feel it in the decisions you keep postponing, in the relationships you refuse to leave, and in the version of yourself you continue performing for other people. But knowing something unconsciously is not the same as having the courage to face it. So the mind creates distractions. Another video, another book, another explanation. Anything that allows you to keep searching without ever being forced to change. Jung discovered that real transformation begins at the exact moment the search outside of you fails. Not because knowledge is useless, but because no amount of knowledge can replace an honest encounter with yourself. There comes a point when the question is no longer, what else do I need to understand? The real question becomes, what truth have I been avoiding? Stay with me, because once you recognize the hidden reason behind your search, you may never look at your life in the same way again. From childhood, you learned which parts of yourself were acceptable and which parts had to disappear. Maybe you were rewarded for being quiet, helpful, strong, or easy to control. Maybe anger made people uncomfortable. Maybe sadness was treated like weakness. So you adapted. You became the version of yourself that caused the least conflict and received the most approval. Jung called this social identity the persona, the mask we create to survive in the world. The persona is not evil. Everyone needs one. It helps you work, communicate, and belong. But the danger begins when the mask becomes so convincing that you forget it is a mask. You start living for the expectations of other people. You say yes when your whole body wants to say no. You hide exhaustion behind discipline. You hide resentment behind kindness. And slowly, the life everyone praises begins to feel like a prison you built with your own hands. This is why approval never feels like enough. People may admire you, depend on you, or even envy you, but something inside still feels unseen. They are responding to the person you learn to perform, not to the parts you keep hidden. Jung believed that the longer you identify with the persona, the more pressure builds beneath it. And eventually, the buried self begins to return through emptiness, anxiety, anger, and patterns you can no longer explain. But the parts you rejected did not disappear. Jung believed they were pushed into the unconscious, where they formed what he called the shadow. The shadow contains everything you were taught not to be. Your anger, jealousy, ambition, fear, selfishness, sensitivity, and desire for control. But it also contains qualities you may need, like courage, confidence, creativity, and the ability to defend yourself. What you bury does not vanish. It simply begins influencing your life from a place you cannot see. This is why certain people affect you so strongly. Someone's confidence may look like arrogance because you never allowed yourself to be confident. Another person's freedom may feel irresponsible because you built your identity around being controlled. Jung believed that what irritates us most in others can reveal something hidden within ourselves. The reaction is real, but the intensity may come from a part of you that has been denied for too long. The shadow also appears through repeated patterns. You choose similar relationships, tolerate the same disrespect, abandon opportunities at the same moment, and then wonder why life keeps repeating itself? Jung's answer would be uncomfortable. What remains unconscious continues to shape your choices. You may call it bad luck, fate, or the behavior of other people. But until you recognize the hidden part of yourself participating in the pattern, the same lesson will return wearing a different face. Most people try to defeat the shadow by becoming even more disciplined, positive, or controlled. But Jung believed that what you resist only gains more power over you. The goal is not to destroy the darker parts of yourself. The goal is to understand them. Anger may be protecting a boundary you never learned to defend. Jealousy may reveal a life you secretly want. Fear may be warning you that the identity you built is beginning to collapse. This is where real self-knowledge begins. Not when you discover something flattering, but when you can face something uncomfortable without immediately turning away. You begin to notice your reactions instead of obeying them. You ask why the same situations trigger you, why certain people have so much power over your emotions, and why you keep betraying your own needs to preserve an image. The moment you become curious about your darkness, it stops controlling you in silence. Jung called this process individuation, the slow movement toward becoming whole. It does not mean becoming perfect, fearless, or completely healed. It means no longer abandoning half of yourself just to remain acceptable. The mask can still exist, but it no longer defines you. The shadow can still speak, but it no longer makes your decisions. And for the first time, your life begins to feel like something you are consciously choosing, rather than something you are endlessly repeating. The final truth is not that you must become someone new. It is that you must stop abandoning the person you already are. Every time you silence your needs, ignore your anger, or betray what you know to be true, you strengthen the mask and weaken your connection with yourself. This is why the search never ends. You keep looking for a new answer while avoiding the old truth that has been waiting inside you all along. Jung believed that becoming conscious is painful because it requires responsibility. Once you see the pattern, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. You may not control what happened to you, but you can begin to recognize what you keep repeating. You can choose a different boundary, a different response, a different relationship, or a different direction. The moment you stop blaming the darkness and begin listening to it, your life starts to change from the inside. Maybe this is not the last video you will ever watch, but it can be the last time you believe that another explanation will save you from yourself. The answer is not hidden in a perfect theory, a perfect teacher, or a perfect future. It begins when you remove the mask, face the shadow, and accept the responsibility of becoming whole. Carl Jung's message was simple, but difficult. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Understanding this is not enough. Jung knew that insight without action quickly becomes another form of escape. You can recognize the mask, name the shadow, and understand every pattern in your life, but nothing changes until you make a different choice. The unconscious loses power only when consciousness enters your behavior. That may begin with one honest conversation, one boundary you finally defend, or one decision you have postponed because it threatens the person others expect you to be. Do not try to transform your entire life in a single day. The ego often turns healing into another performance, another impossible standard to achieve. Instead, pay attention to the moments when you feel divided. Notice when your words say yes, but your body says no. Notice when your anger hides behind politeness, when fear disguises itself as logic, and when the need for approval controls your decisions. These small moments reveal where the mask is still speaking for you. Your real life begins when you stop asking permission to become who you are, Not everyone will understand the change. Some people benefited from the version of you that stayed silent, available, and easy to control. But becoming whole was never meant to make everyone comfortable. It was meant to make your life honest. The search ends when you stop waiting for another answer and begin living according to the truth you have already recognized. When you begin living more honestly, your life may feel unstable before it feels peaceful. Old relationships may change. Certain goals may lose their meaning. People who were comfortable with your silence may resist your new boundaries. This does not always mean you are making the wrong choice. Sometimes discomfort is simply the cost of no longer betraying yourself. Jung understood that growth often feels like loss because the old identity must weaken before a more authentic life can emerge. You may also feel lonely during this process. The mask once gave you belonging, even if that belonging was based on performance. Without it, you may wonder who you are and where you fit. But this uncertainty is not emptiness. It is space. It is the space where a truer identity can develop. Instead of asking, who should I become? Begin asking, what feels honest now? The answer may not arrive all at once, but it becomes clearer each time you stop pretending. This is the deeper meaning of individuation. You do not become whole by removing every contradiction. You become whole by learning to hold them consciously. You can be kind and still have boundaries, strong and still vulnerable, ambitious and still at peace. The goal is not to become a flawless person. The goal is to become a real one. And once you begin living from that place, you no longer need to search endlessly for permission to exist. You do not need to find one more perfect answer before your life can begin. The work starts when you notice the mask, listen to what you have buried, and make one honest choice instead of repeating the familiar pattern. Becoming whole is not a single revelation. It is a decision you make again and again. So, before you leave, ask yourself one question. What truth about your life have you already recognized, but still refuse to act on? Your answer may be uncomfortable, but it may also be the beginning of the life that is actually yours. And if this message reached you at the right moment, subscribe. Here, we explore the hidden parts of the mind through the ideas of Carl Jung and learn how to stop living unconsciously